What if the Auburn Tigers won the SEC West this season?
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Happy Ferg Friday to all who celebrate. The everydayers know that we are joined by Justin Ferguson of the Auburn Observer. And let's play a little what-if game today, Ferg. What if Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers won the SEC West in 2023? Sure, we all agree that is an uphill battle. Several things would have to happen in order for them to get to that point, but let's play the game. What if? I obviously think the first thing is just total buy-in in Hugh Freeze and the program and what he's trying to do and instill in the program. I mean, that may be at a historic high. I think it'd be compared to like how you felt after the 2013 season under Gus Malzahn's first year.
Yeah, I mean, look at LSU this past year. They just did it. So it's not out of the complete realm of possibility. Auburn is a team we talked about recently, still in the blue chip ratio, still, on paper has enough talent to make some noise. It would just be, like a lot of this stuff you go from in year one, you would have to it has to click immediately. And to me, the big thing I think would, if Auburn wins the West, or if Auburn makes a run at winning the SEC West in 2023, that means whatever they get out of their quarterback position this year is just firing on all cylinders. They get above and beyond the expectations at the quarterback position, which, isn't completely out of the realm of possibility that they could have a great team. I mean, Peyton Thorne, if Peyton Thorne looks like 2021 Peyton Thorne at Auburn, those are numbers that Auburn hasn't seen since Jarrett Stidham, and maybe even before that. Or say a guy like Robbie Ashford puts it all together. You see a lot of potential in something like that because, obviously Ashford was a top 5 running quarterback in the country last season. So, I mean, that would be a big thing there. And for both of those guys, what if you have a situation where those guys are in SEC West championship territory, there's potential that those guys could come back and you could build on that even further for next season. Now, both of them would be draft eligible, but you also have to think there, it's you have a foundation laid at that point, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where really is where Auburn really needs to take that step. That's what they've kind of lagged behind in the last few years, is just having that offense and that quarterback play that can make them championship contenders.
If Peyton Thorne was 2017 Jarrett Stidham, I mean, that puts Auburn as a chance to win 10 games this season, right? I mean, that's not an outlandish thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, it would depend on how the defense, kind of holds up.
Sure.
One thing about Auburn's defense this year is you got to keep an eye on, though, is that they were so bad at stopping the run last season. I mean, those numbers are rough, but you do have a great secondary. So if you can just figure out that core, that up front, with the rebuilt defensive line and the linebackers, a really good spot.
Right. I mean, for better or for worse, the defensive line is completely different, and the linebacker room looks completely different as well.
And you got a new scheme, and you've got a guy who's had a lot of success doing some of the stuff that you need on your front seven or front
and emotionally,
six.
Right? I mean, emotionally, if you're a defender, knowing that the offense has a better chance to put points on the board too, it's gotta ignite something.
Yeah, and you would think the secondary behind you should be able to rock as well if you're a guy who's at the linebacker spot. So. Yeah, I think, when Auburn won in 2013, I think the big thing for them is they picked up where they left off in 11, right? It was the 1 year where they changed everything up on offense and it didn't go well. And then they bring Malzahn back in and they say, hey, we're just going back to what a lot of you guys were recruited to play. And let's get the quarterback, take off from there. LSU last season, LSU, it was just kind of leadership and structurally wise. I mean, they had all the talent. They've always had the talent at LSU. There's no doubt about that. It was just, could they get the guy to kind of put it all together? And they needed the quarterback as well with Jaden Daniels. So, I mean, it was easier for those two teams to do it. For Auburn, you're coming into a situation, if you're Hugh Freeze, where it's wow, this team has not been what it's needed to be the last couple of years. It's not as quick and easy of a fix as maybe it would have been at LSU or at Auburn in 2013. But we have seen Freeze make some noise as a guy who can lead teams to upsets and get hot before.
how different is this Auburn roster versus LSU's roster last year? Just the whole situation? Because, I mean, there are some similarities. And I think LSU's roster last year is better than Auburn's roster this year just because LSU always recruits well. That's just who they are. But there are some similarities, right? I mean, you're bringing in a coach. It's their first year there, and they've won everywhere else that they've been. Like, that's a parallel. You're bringing in a quarterback that maybe was underappreciated at his previous stop. I mean, I think there's some similarities there. And, I mean, they did use the transfer portal going into last season. I mean, Kelly used the portal to patch holes. Granted, it was less holes than what Hugh Freeze had to do just due to previous years of recruiting, due to previous regimes. But, like, there are some similarities here. And then you look at the biggest games on each of those schedules. They were both playing Alabama. They had to beat Alabama at home. Auburn gets Alabama at home. So, I mean, there are some similarities between the two squads.
Yeah, the foundation, though, is just different because the last couple of seasons, LSU is, a team that has been recruiting off the strength of a national championship not too long ago and the fact that it's LSU. So these are top 5, top 10 classes that they're building. And then you get to add and kind of tweak from there. For Auburn, it's top 20 classes a little bit further back. And so, like, I think that's the foundation makes the big difference there. And that's where I think the ceiling can kind of be different. One of my things that it's interesting with Auburn and with LSU last season, you go back to that Florida State game in the opener. A lot of people came out of that game thinking like, oh man, LSU is a mess at the line of scrimmage. Especially on the offensive side. They were
in the game they were. In that game they definitely were.
Starting freshmen on the offensive line. The guy got pushed around at times on the defensive front. It just did not look good. And then lo and behold, they end up winning the SEC West. Now, when they got to the SEC championship game and some other games they played that season, that weakness on the line of scrimmage kind of showed up a little bit more. For Auburn, it's you have rebuilt your offensive line mostly with guys that are really good group of 5 players. Obviously, you've got some people who are coming back defensively. You got to get a lot better than you were last season. So if you get the skill position and a lot of in the case of LSU, always good linebackers, defensive backs. The one big difference when we talked about recruiting with LSU and Auburn, LSU had a Harold Perkins, and you would love if you're Auburn, different type of player. You would love if a Keldrick Falk could be like a Harold Perkins, but that's really, really hard to do. And like, you got to remember, Perkins was like a top 5 player in the country coming out of high school. That's a big thing because LSU last season could make up for some of their weaknesses in the line of scrimmage because they were just terrorizing people in the backfield. Does Auburn have that? That's my biggest question, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, it's going to be tough for them to get to that level.
Yep. And Elijah McAllister will be asked that question next week. I all but guarantee it.
Sure.
And then, I guess just, another way to answer the question, what if Auburn wins the SEC West in 2023? I mean, there's all these players that I think are interested in Auburn, but they don't really know what they're getting if they come here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you talk about some of these flips that we talk about need to happen for Auburn to get a top 10 class. You got to think all those guys would fall in line and be more okay to like buy in, because the term that you and Painter talk about all the time on y'all's podcast, like the proof of concept would certainly be there.
Yeah. I mean, LSU got a top 5 class after winning the SEC West this past year.
Yeah,
I mean, like
winning helps. Absolutely.
That's the type of buzz you can get. That's the type of launch you could get. If you're a team like Auburn. Also, an interesting case is like if you win the West, well, hey, you won the West in the last year. That was the thing, because now moving forward, it's the top 2 teams that are going to go to the SEC title. So it's just like, if you can establish yourself very quickly as, hey, we're capable of playing for an SEC title. Well, now in an expanded playoff and in a new look SEC moving forward, it's like, okay, now you're into the mix of where like this team could, potentially be in the hunt for a playoff spot. I'm not saying they're going to make a playoff every year. That's going to be really hard for a lot of teams to do.
Right.
But if you could just say, hey, we're going to come into the year, say, if everything goes our way, we think we can realistically make a college football playoff. Like, to be able to establish that pretty quickly, which I think long-term is what this team wants to do, what this program is building towards, to be able to kind of speed up that process would be so huge in a number of areas.
All right, we got some news about an Auburn linebacker being with the team no longer. We'll discuss more so what it means for the roster moving forward next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. And it's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit, or you get your money back. Because just like in sports, the confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only applies to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Justin Ferguson, our guest on today's Locked On Auburn. So Wednesday night, reports confirmed that DeMario Tolan is no longer with the team. Of course, he hasn't played it down at Auburn. He was a very talented and athletic linebacker at LSU. Speaking of that LSU team a year ago, was a big part of their win against Alabama as far as spying Bryce Young. But he's no longer with the team. We're not really going to get into why, because I don't think that's our story to tell, Justin. I'm sure you agree. So As far as what this means for the roster moving forward, based on the limited action we saw of him in spring, it didn't really seem like he was going to be a huge factor this season regardless. But you talk about the future of the linebacker position. I kind of thought he would be a part of the future of the position. Obviously, that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, they were talking in the spring like, hey, we didn't sign a high school linebacker, so it was really important to get a guy like DeMario Tolan, who, and I think him and Robert Woodyard Jr. kind of share the same kind of background in the fact that, hey, it would be a second-year guy that even if they're not starters, even if they're not your key guys this year, you look at him as super talented dudes that you could play in the future. I like Tolan's game a lot. I think he was one of those dudes that was going to be able to kind of be very rangy, very athletic, do a lot of what you asked him to. You talk in the spring with Josh Aldridge, and it was just like when he puts it all together, it's going to be really, really fun to watch. And so there was a lot of that in the spring where it was like, yeah, he's coming along. Like you're seeing him out there, but not with the starters. It's just, hey, you bring him in, because I think that was the whole thing with him at LSU too. They looked at him last season at LSU and said, hey, this guy's got a lot of tools. We got to get him on the field to get him some of that experience. Even if he's not our dude yet, if he's not our key guy yet, we think he could be down the line. We just need to give him some reps now. And I felt like Auburn this year was going to be another step for him in that regard. Like he would be in the rotation, but probably not, one of the main guys this season. And so it's a loss for sure. It definitely is for Auburn, because it's, again, this I think is going to put more stress on getting the right linebackers and moving forward in 2024. With your recruiting class, you obviously got Joseph Phillips coming in. It'd be interesting to see where Auburn kind of views him, positionally. But you're gonna need to get more guys, kind of like a Tolan's caliber. It was kind of like stealing backfilling for that 2022 class there, and now you're gonna have to put more emphasis on bringing in those guys in the future.
Yeah, and we've had Christian Clemente on the show a few weeks ago, and he talked about the importance of, they're probably going to bring in 4 linebackers, and the 4 linebackers all make sense. But even if you do that, like the timing is almost off a little bit now, because like you don't want to start a freshman at linebacker in the SEC. You may have to, and if they get certain guys to flip, like a DeMarcus Riddick, like okay, you feel a little bit better, starting him versus other folks. But
sure,
you'd rather start. A guy that would have been told in that situation, he would have been a redshirt sophomore in 24.
Would have been a third-year guy, yeah.
Robert
Woodyard as well would be another guy to look at, and I think it would be
feel
big
better
for him.
doing that than a first-year guy. So like the timing is off a little bit. I am curious to see if they'll go to the portal to get a little bit more of like another Larry Nixon type player that they got from North Texas. Yeah. But they may feel good with the 4 freshman linebackers, and especially with Riddick, if they can pull that off. I mean, he may be good enough to start day one.
Yeah, and you could have fifth year guys coming back. I think we're still at that point. Maybe
I think Cam Riley could come back.
I think Riley and Steiner are the last of that group that could come back, because they came in 20.
Is Asante done after this season?
I think Asante still got multiple years, or maybe
I think so
one,
too. Yeah, I think those 3 guys could come back.
And I do think for Auburn this year, I think when you look at what their team is right now, so this past offseason, you saw big transfer portal gains and a good recruiting class, especially for where you started with, but a smaller recruiting class. And so what I think Auburn, the most realistic scenario is now you kind of bring it a little bit more towards the middle. You may take less transfers, but I still think they're going to be very active in the transfer portal. And I think you're going to take more guys in your 2024 class, but I wouldn't expect Auburn to sign a top 10 class and with 30 dudes in it or anything like that. So I think the game plan we saw Auburn do in 2023, this offseason, I think you're going to see a variation of that in 2024. And, like you said, you may bring in 4 linebackers, but you could also use a Larry Nixon, or you could go bring in another Austin Keys. Keys has eligibility remaining as well. I should point that out.
He does?
I believe he does. I think he's listed as a junior. Let me
That's great news. I, for some reason, thought he was a grad transfer. I don't know why I thought that, but I thought he was.
Austin Keys is listed at Auburn as a junior. So he
that changes the whole. Okay, that's awesome.
He could play another year because he was let's see if I remember correctly, he only had 2 seasons at Ole Miss that he played in. They actually played in. So yeah. So you're not starting completely over from there. But yes, you are. It's kind of like how I feel about the DB room. Like, you got so many of those young DBs because the losses are coming. That you're going to have to turn the page. Linebacker, you have a little bit more wiggle room, but you do need to kind of get that filling up moving forward. So it'll be interesting to see where they fit all those guys into the picture.
Yeah, because there are several positions where you're just losing a lot. Like, you're going to lose your starting 2 corners.
Tight end, you're losing everybody except for like one dude.
Yeah, except for like Micah Riley-Ducker. That's it. I think everybody else would be gone.
And you could have some super senior guys come back, but yeah, like that's a tough situation to be.
Your offensive line, especially if Dylan Wade chooses to go pro, which I think he wants to. So your receivers that you brought in. The three of the 4 transfer receivers you brought in. This is their last year. So there's
it's not a young team by any means, but that makes sense because the last 2 years you haven't been nails in recruiting, and then on top of that, like you've had a lot of attrition. You've had a ton of attrition these last few classes.
Right. All right, Ferg. Let's tackle another hypothetical question. Who are Auburn's top 3 reception leaders this upcoming season? We'll share our thoughts on that in a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. I want to encourage you to join the Locked On Auburn Discord. It is free. All you have to do is click the link in the episode description down below. And Ferg, how can people check out everything you guys have going on at the Auburn Observer?
AuburnObserver.com. Check it out. $6 a month or $60 a year to get everything we've got. We've been putting out newsletters and podcasts. I got some fun ones coming up here. We're going to Media Days. Dan and I will both be in Nashville, so we'll have stuff from that, both on the written side and on the podcast side. It's a great time to sign up. And obviously, we are counting down the weeks until fall camp gets rolling, and then the floodgates will open. You'll get a ton of stuff from us pretty much every day of the week. So AuburnObserver.com, sign up. We email everything to you. And it's a good time to hop on board and go ahead and get that subscription rolling before the season starts. I listened to you and Dan do the draft against each other. Yeah. Your team was significantly better than his. I felt bad about Dan afterwards because I feel like I kind of like forced him into outthinking himself, and I'll take that. That's part of the game. The victory. Yeah, that's part of the game. Yeah, I'll take the victory. It's better. It's better. I'm used to beating Painter, so I now need to get used to beating Dan. So that's right. That's right. That's great. Yeah, be sure to check out the Auburn Observer podcast. He'll do a great job. All right, so looking at the top 3 reception leaders for Auburn this upcoming season, we both probably agree on who the number 1 will be, Javarius Johnson. Yeah, I like Javarius Johnson's potential a lot. I think if healthy, which has always kind of been the big thing with him, he can play a lot. There are a lot of RPOs in this offense, a lot of quick stuff for a dude that runs really good routes that is hard to cover over the middle. It should be a big year for him. After that, I think you go any direction. After that, it's, hey, how do you feel, guys? It wouldn't shock me if it was a running back. It wouldn't shock me if it was a tight end. And it wouldn't shock me if it was one of these big outside wide receivers. I genuinely don't know who it would be after that. I'm really high on Jair Shorter, but I don't think he's going to be like that type of dude. I don't think he's going to be a 6 or 7 catch a game. Yeah, maybe less receptions, more yards kind of guy. Right. This is going to be a cop-out kind of But if I had to pick the other two, I would go. I would say one of your top three guys would be whoever emerges as the top like X, whether it's a Shane Hooks, whether it's a Camden Brown, whether a guy and maybe not even just an X. Like what if a dude like Coy Moore just continues to kind of take a step forward? Like that's the one I'm keeping an eye on. Like so, it'd be an outside receiver, and then my third pick, I'm going Rivaldo Fairweather. I'm going Rivaldo.
I think I would too.
I like Rivaldo's game. He was on the field so much in spring ball. I think he brings a level of explosiveness, big playability that Auburn just hasn't had at tight end in a while. Like they've used the tight end more recently. Shanker was on the field more than anybody, and you've seen the progress go in that but like you got to go back a ways before the last time Auburn had a guy who was like a big play threat at tight end. It's been a long time. And so this is also a school that doesn't really throw the ball to the tight end very often historically.
Have they ever had a dude that they actually used like Rivaldo Fairweather? I mean,
no.
CJ Uzama, but like not really the same type player in my mind.
Like CJ would do things where he would split out and he would do some of that kind of stuff. But yeah, the thing with CJ is he played on really run heavy offenses, so you didn't see as much volume with him.
Right.
I think if a CJ Uzama would have played in this offense, he would have been a key player because you would obviously look at what they had done in the past with guys like Evan Ingram and Dawson Knox, and like that would kind of be the blueprint. But yeah, I think Rivaldo, like he is a unique player, and I think he is going to be a guy where you'll see him on the field quite a bit. And I would go with Rivaldo. Javarius, the top outside receiver, and Rivaldo feels like the best one. It's just who's going to be that top outside guy. I can see where it could be Shane Hooks. I can see where it could be Camden Brown. I can see where it could be a number of guys.
Entertain me here. What if we're a few weeks into the season, Jarquez Hunter is just absolutely killing it, and they want to feed him the ball more for like postseason award type things because that's a thing. That would not shock me if that happened.
Yeah, he is a solid receiver. Obviously made some big plays with his, out of the backfield these last couple of years. I am very interested to see how they use him in the passing game, knowing that the guys behind him at running back are also dudes that have really good potential, like a guy like Brian Battie. Jeremiah Cobb did that a ton at Catholic. Damari Austin, I think, has got a really good skill set for that if he can continue to develop it. So, yeah, it's just like, especially if you're wide receivers, and I think that's where we're all kind of coming from this year, is that Auburn's wide receivers, like there's a lot of question marks about them. Is like, do they have what it takes to be to get this offense to the next level? If that's the case, you're going to need some help from that running backs. Like if you still have doubts of that, sure, yeah, I can see where Hunter did, because Hunter,
he was 5th in catches last year with 17
and third in yards, and was one of only 3 guys that had multiple touchdown catches last season. So like the process is there.
Bad.
Oh, it's bad. I wrote about it last week. It's like if you go back and look, it's like Auburn, the inability that Auburn has had really since the 2017 season to get big plays from their passing game is what has separated them from the pack. That's the biggest concern. So I think if you're a team like Auburn, and I think if you're a coaching staff like Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery, it's like, hey, we'll do it by any means necessary. Because I think the good thing about both of those guys is if you look through their histories, they use a wide variety of players that can succeed with different types of quarterbacks, and they can succeed with different types of receivers.
Yeah, because Tank led in receptions last year with 30. Obviously, he's gone. Javarius Johnson was second with 26. We both think he'll lead in catches on this year's team. Shanker and Coy Moore were both tied at 20 right after that. And so I think Coy's in a tough situation depth chart-wise, but if he gets the job, like I love Coy Moore. I love what he brings. We really only saw him, if my memory is correct, at slot in the spring. And I feel like that hurts him because of Johnson.
Yeah, they're moving him around for sure. Yeah. And I think the other thing there is he can definitely play on the outside. He can play that flanker role, but it's like who do they feel good about there? And look, there's some younger guys on this team. The Malcolm Johnson Jr.'s, the Amari Kelly, Jay Fair, guys who had good springs. And obviously Johnson was hurt, but you you could say, like, who breaks out of that curve? Like, it is up for grabs, especially when you bring in so many transfers like Hooks, like Jair Shorter, like like a guy that you could be turning into somebody pretty special down the line, and Caleb Burton. Like, there's a whole lot there that it's just like, who's going to step up? Like, you've got the numbers. It's just who will emerge, and it could be anybody. Like you said at the beginning of the segment, like, it could be anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll see. Let us know who you think in the comments or on socials. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Top 3 reception earners for Auburn this season. Ferg, one more time, how can people check out everything you got going on?
AuburnObserver.com, $6 a month or $60 a year. We email everything out to you. So we got newsletters, podcasts. We'll be at Media Days next week. It'll be a lot of fun.
It will be a ton of fun. Follow me on socials at Zac Blackerby. Read all my written work at auburndaily.com. Or if you want to check out Atlanta Braves content, bravestoday.com. We will see you Monday from SEC Media Days. This has been Locked On Auburn.